Well, hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Adam. Thanks for hanging out with me again today, and today's video is going to be the start of the Tamiya Hilux build. So I bought this kit a year ago, at least. It was at an auction. They had a local auction here in Virginia, and there was a ton of RC stuff on there. I had plans of getting at least 2 or 3 of those kits. Well, actually I had plans of getting 5 or 6 of those kits. I ended up getting 2, but I did walk away with this. I didn't get a terribly great deal on it, but it was cheaper than what you can get it for normally, so I don't feel bad about getting it. Now, this is a heavy kit. This kit weighs more than the Grand Hauler I just got. So there is a lot of metal in the chassis and, you know, the driveline of this, so it should be a fun kit. I'm going to get it all unboxed, get it out on the table. So I may take 2 views of it. One of, you know, the plastic body parts and all that stuff. And then another of, you know, all the chassis bits and all the metal stuff. I'll take a picture of the inside of the box, but essentially up top, you have your main body parts. Down below, you have a bunch of plastic parts. And then over here in this corner, there's like a 15-pound box of stuff. So I'll get it all spread out on the table. Once we get it out on the table, I'll start building it. It's not going to probably be all built in one video. You know, I may get the chassis done in one, and then we'll come back, work on the body, and then probably finish it up with a third. So this is probably going to be at least a 2 or 3 part series. There's an awful lot to do on this, and it's one I want to take my time and enjoy. The other thing is I'm not putting the MFC in this. Tamiya has strange ideas on what the price of their electronics are. You know, they're still selling MFCs that were designed 30 years ago, almost 25, 30 years ago, and selling them for $300, $350, $370, $380, depending on, you know, where you can get it from. It's ridiculous. So GT Power was kind enough to send over their Bluetooth version of the RC Car Sounds and Light Simulator. So there is the light control unit, the sound control unit, the speaker, all the lights, all the wiring, everything in here. It is Bluetooth capable, so you can change settings on your phone. So this is a much better deal than the MFC. Now, with the MFC, yes, you do get a speed controller built into it. A 1060 is going to work fine for this. So I'm not worried about, you know, losing that functionality of a speed controller built into it. So with the 1060 and possibly a slower motor, a 35 turn motor or something in here, this has the 3-speed transmission, but if it's anything like the Globeliner or the tractor trailer type trucks, the 3-speed is makes things a little too fast for the truck it is. I know the leaf springs in here are hard as a rock. It has little suspension, so 3rd gear is probably going to be way faster than I want it to be for, you know, keeping the truck nice. Anyway, I'm going to get it laid out, get it on the bench, take some pictures. I will take pictures as I go, as I build it, and then we'll see how far we get in this video. Alright guys, so we have the chassis all put together. Now this is going to take you some time. There's just a lot of bits and pieces and parts and stuff to put together. So this is not a 3 or 4 hour build. I probably got 6 hours into this. You know, it wasn't all at one time. If you sat down and started from start to finish, maybe 4 or 5 hours, you could probably get it done. But I worked on it for 3 hours and then, you know, an hour here and an hour there throughout the week. Got it all put together. Now, this guy is heavy. The box of hardware alone, I think was like it was ridiculous. And as far as hardware goes, I still have enough hardware here to build a whole nother kit. So I know a fair amount of it's going to go to put the body together, but man, you get a lot of extra hardware. Now, some of it is because you can do 2-wheel steering or 4-wheel steering. Right now, I've opted to just do the front wheel steering. I know it doesn't have great turn radius. You know, I'm not looking for super high performance out of this truck. This truck is mostly about the build, the looks of it, and just the cool factor of everything in it. So I'm not really worried about, you know, super tight turn radiuses and stuff like that. Everything went together fairly well. There are some fiddly parts. Honestly, these exhausts thing and rear bumper, that was probably one of the most fiddly things to put together on this. You know, you're looking at this and it's got a big 3-speed transmission with, you know, 115 parts just in the transmission alone. I don't know exactly, but, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in there. That is so much easier to put on than this little area back here, but we'll touch on that here in a minute. There's some wonkiness to it. That really weird curved steering rod, it's odd, but I kind of see why they did it. You know, it's to give it enough suspension travel, to keep it away from everything, and it kind of self-clearances itself out of the way. I put this on in the manual. This is for the 4-wheel steering, and essentially it connects the servo back here to a secondary link. So it's just a little 90-degree pivot block that goes on. Since I'm not doing the 4-wheel steering, I just opted to go ahead and take this off completely. It's 3 bolts back here and clip the rod in back on if I want to put it back on. The other thing I did not put on is this little switch housing. Obviously, with the 1060, the switch isn't going to work like the original Tamiya one did. And essentially, the switch gets bolted up into here so you can reach underneath, turn it on and off. I'm still not 100% sure why this little trough is here. Basically, the servo sits right in here and kind of swings almost in line with that trough. The little ball cup slides right back and forth inside of it. I don't know. I opted to leave that off, mainly because I use the aluminum servo arm on here, and you know, I'm not worried about the servo. The servo can take it. And again, I'm not going to beat on this truck, so I'm not worried about anything getting bent or broken by running the aluminum servo arm, and it just gets rid of the whole flexible servo saver. And it was kind of rubbing on this, so I just opted to pull that off since the switch housing isn't doing me any good. Overall, I really enjoyed the build. I did not lock the diffs, and the reason I did not lock them is they're really, really easy to lock. There's basically pull the front and rear pumpkin covers off. There's a threaded pin that you just line up the differential and the axle, and the threaded pin goes through and locks it all together. You put a little rubber cap on there and then put the pumpkin cover back on, and you've locked the diffs. So right now we are running open diffs in here, and again, I'm not trying to make this into a rock crawler, so this will help what little turning that it actually has. Let's go back into this real quick. So these little floating muffler brackets are a neat idea. When it's running, you're going to be able to see those kind of wobbling around. You know, neat idea. The issue with mounting them is you have two little tiny screws going into two little tiny brackets. They are really fiddly to get in and on. These screws are 3 times longer than they need to be. All you're doing is holding this little metal wire in, so you need like a 6mm screw, but they give you like a 12mm screw to put into it. And they're tiny, so you got a little tiny screwdriver screwing it in forever. That was okay. Getting the little screws in through the bent wire pieces here on the ends of these was a pain. But overall, getting all that mounted was just fiddly. Putting this rear bumper bracket on, this rear bumper on through the bracket was a pain in the butt. You are going to need some tools you probably don't normally use when you're building kits. Giant slip jaw pliers, some of the like the steering and the lockout brackets or links. You really need something big to get in there, because you have basically a ball stud, a centerpiece, and another ball stud, and you're trying to get this thing on there with a pair of needle nose pliers, and it just wants to rock back and forth. So I had to break out the big pliers for it. And the other thing is, I actually had to use a ratchet and a number 2 JIS screwdriver tip to get in, because to mount this whole bumper assembly with the weebles on it, this is already on here. The rear end piece is already on here because the suspension mounts to it. So you put that on way early in the instructions, and then you have to get in here to these 2 screws to screw through this way into the bumper bracket. And I didn't have any type of screwdriver I could get in there and actually get a turn on. So I actually had to use a 1/4-inch ratchet and whatever socket fit this. I think it was a 1/4-inch socket. I don't remember. But I actually had to get that in there so where I could, you know, make a 1/4 turn at a time to tighten that up. If you do that, be very careful. It is really easy to strip out plastic by threading a screw into with something like this. You get a whole lot more torque on a ratchet than you can with a screwdriver. So just be careful with that. But that was kind of the only way I could get it in there. I tried different screwdrivers, and you know, everything was just either too long or too fat to get a good line on it and get your hand around it to turn it. But anyway, overall, it looks really cool. Huge skid plate. The suspension works pretty well. You know, everybody complains that these springs are super stiff, but overall, I don't feel like they're too stiff. I mean, it is rigid, but it has decent movement. Now, you can make them softer, and you can make them much harder. Obviously, I would not recommend going any harder unless you're planning on putting like a flatbed on here and putting extra weight. Then you may want to add an extra leaf to the spring in the back. But overall, I think the way they recommend in the instructions works great. And again, I did go with the stock motor, and we have the 1060 in here. Everything's working, so let me turn on the radio. So steering works fine. It's not a ton of steering radius, so you know, that's kind of maxed out. I had to turn the steering rate down to like 60–70%, something like that, to keep it from binding. Because, you know, I got a 35 kg servo on here, and it was like shifting the whole axle around a little bit when it was binding. But everything works well. I've got the 3-speed bound up to a little momentary switch on the radio, so the push forward moves it, push back centers it, push back again pulls it back the other way. So you have low, medium, and high speed. So it's got plenty of speed. And on low, you know, you have pretty good low speed modulation. Now if I put a 1080 in here, I would probably get even better low speed and get rid of that little bit of a whine. But again, I'm not too terribly worried about it. And I think the only other thing is these are those rock hard ass tires that come with a lot of the other, you know, CCO2 and stuff like that kits. That's what these things were designed for. This is the only kit that those tires should ever come on, because they're actually stiff enough to hold up to the weight of this truck. You know, when you get this thing down, they don't squish at all. So the other interesting thing is these aluminum shocks, they work well. You know, they don't provide a terrible lot of dampening, but they actually work pretty well. There's no oil in them. You just put a thick friction dampener soft grease in there, and all it is it's a big thick aluminum shaft that has 2 O-ring grooves on the top that goes into an aluminum body. You just put the grease on there and cycle them up and down, and the grease is basically just in there to lubricate everything and slow that movement down in there. Now you can put a bit more grease in there to kind of, you know, add to that, but you don't want to put the grease in first and then push the arm in, because it's all going to go squirting out the bottom of the shock around the shock shaft. And if you put too much in when you fully compress it, there's a vent hole in the top of the shock body, and all that excess grease is going to go out of the top. So what I did is I put one in, thought about putting a little bit more grease in, so I built the second one with more grease. That worked well. And I added a little bit more to the third one, and then it started squirting out the top. So essentially what I did was I put a bunch in all of them, and then compressed them, let all the excess squirt out, and then that's where I left it. And, you know, that is going to be kind of the maximum capability of those. The other tip I want to give you guys, this comes with the Tamiya liquid thread lock. Now, this stuff works great, and it sets up super fast, but be careful with this. This is a solvent-based thread lock. Unlike the red Tamiya AG thread lock, the anaerobic gel, this one, I don't know what they make this out of, but it stays gel-like forever, and you know, it will cure and prevent screws from working themselves back out. Should not harm the plastic. Now, obviously, you don't want to smear it all over the plastic, because too much, you know, could damage it. This stuff being a solvent-based, this will mess up your plastic, so do not get this on plastic. Even when you're putting it on, make sure you don't have plastic underneath of it. I actually had a piece of, thankfully it was a piece that I wasn't using, but I had a parts tree sitting in front of me, and I put some stuff on the screw, and I moved it across, and a little thread of the thread lock kind of dripped across it, and it actually etched into the plastic. So be careful using this. This stuff will set up on its own. Actually, it leaked on my pit mat, so I have this gooey glob of thread lock. Now this will continue to dry out and actually get hard. The little bit you put on the threads, it sets up in 5–10 minutes, and it's locked in there. But just be careful with this stuff. Again, I still have the whole body to do. That's going to be in a completely separate video. I just wanted to get the chassis built and up and running. And I was a little worried because this was an open box kit, and you know, this was something I bought at an auction, so I was worried that there was going to be missing some parts. You know, somebody robbed 1 or 2 parts out of it to, you know, fix something else. Thankfully, the only thing I seem to be missing is there's 2 little metal tips that are supposed to go on the exhaust. So these little black chrome mufflers may come off because I could not find the little metal tips. Maybe somewhere I'm not looking or haven't opened yet, but it was supposed to be in one of the hardware bags. I did not see it. So these may get replaced with, there's some brushed aluminum looking ones in the actual metal parts bag that are this color. So I may just swap out the muffler part for the kind of brushed aluminum bit, but we'll see. You know, it doesn't look terrible. They just look like little Honda mufflers or something, the way they're kind of shaped now. So I may put the wider dual muffler tips on there. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. So the truck is built. So now it's moving on to the body work and all that stuff. Fingers crossed I can get out there and get that done. Should be fairly quick. I'm going to blast it all in the silver and then come back, mask it off for the blue, paint it all the blue, and then everything else should be just mounting stuff to it and getting the decals on. So fingers crossed I can get that done pretty soon and come back with a wrap up of the whole truck built, and then we'll actually get it outside and take it on a light run. Like I said, I'm not planning on rock crawling with this one or doing anything crazy, so this one's just going to kind of teetle around in the yard and, you know, just look cool. But before we get that tootle around the yard, I do have to get all the lights and sound kit in here, find a place to mount that, get it all set up, get all the wiring done, get all the wiring hidden, and do all that. So this part may take as long as the body, I'm not sure. But we've got to figure out how to stuff this box full of stuff in here somewhere. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know, not a whole lot going on this one. I just kind of stitched together the assembly part, but hope you guys enjoyed it. Everybody out there, as always, you guys be happy, be healthy, be safe, and I will catch you on the next one. See you guys.